So I think the smart move here is, if I can remember how to do this, is mute everyone and then unmute Nathan and let him get started.
I can share my screen too if you want.
Yeah, I've enabled screen share, and now I'm just
see this right here, correct?
Yes.
Awesome. Looking good.
And that means you guys should also see this. Correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Awesome. Cool. So yeah, I can jump right in if you want. I can is that we're heading over the reins, so to speak?
Yeah, I'm gonna just give me a second. I'm gonna do a mute all.
Okay.
And then if you can either unmute yourself or I can try it. So everybody will do questions at the end, and you can also use the chat function.
There we go. Back on. Everybody good? Great. So listen, and remind me, Eric, I had kind of roughly 30-ish minutes prepared, including questions. That's about right for your time frame. I can go longer or shorter, depending on what you got for time. You were on mute. I realized I asked that question after I muted you on there.
Just do whatever feels comfortable.
Yeah, whatever feels good.
That's the wrong answer.
We'll certainly, half an hour or an hour will not go longer than our meetings usually go.
Okay.
So you're welcome to fill in.
Well, I have, for everybody, just to have some time purposes, I have budgeted around a half hour or so, but I have a tendency either to talk long or I can wrap it up quicker too. So definitely let me know. If you guys have any questions, feel free to chime in as well. And I'm pretty familiar with some Zoom stuff too. So if you have any kind of comments or questions in the chat, I will have the chat open as well. Or if you raise your hand or anything like that, I'll keep a note out for it too. So just so you guys know. All right. So what I thought we'd do today is talk a little bit about Zeta. And Zeta is, just for those who don't know, we're part of RCS. We're the worldwide leader in radio software. We have offices all throughout, international offices. I think there's like 10 or so international offices. We have G Selectors, our music scheduling software. Zeta is our latest and greatest radio automation software. You might be familiar with hearing NextGen. That is kind of our older version of Zeta. And again, we just phased it out due to technology advancements. And then, of course, we have other traffic software like Acquira. We have content delivery networks with Revma, a whole bunch of stuff. As I said, we're kind of the worldwide leader in radio software. For today's purpose, I thought we'd do is we'd talk kind of about Zeta, leaning towards what COVID brought to the table in regards to remote workflows, talking about Zeta to go, and then talk about where we're heading, which is Zeta Cloud and Zeta Cloud-based disaster recovery. So again, any questions, let me know. What I'll do first is kind of, we have this presentation we had from our good friend Scott, and I did this for one of our clients here. And so it's just a nice little quick overview of some things. I'm going to just do aerial views here and then kind of really jump into Zeta Cloud and talk about some infrastructure. But first, I want to talk a little behind the scenes about how Zeta operates. So essentially, we have, of course, the Zeta UI. We are SQL Server based, which means that we essentially need a Windows machine with SQL Server on it. We follow all the latest and greatest Microsoft versions with SQL versions as well. So Windows 10, Windows SQL Server 2019, all that good stuff in there as well. And again, it's essentially it's a UI model. So we have essentially the Zeta UI with some communication layers and some Zeta services as well, which is always great for those who don't know, is because the Zeta UI is a different experience than, let's say, what is actually playing out over the air. We have what we call the detached play button. So if I do close the Zeta UI, we're still running from that Zeta file server somewhere in the rack room. And again, I can elaborate any more on this if you guys want. Just raise your hands or poke me. I'm just doing more of an aerial view right now to get some of the good stuff with cloud infrastructure and where we're heading. So again, just to kind of, typical Zeta cluster here, you have the Zeta file server, you got production rooms, you got traffic or G selector programming servers, you got the on-air studios, the main playout, again, very traditional stuff. We also have Zeta to go, which operates as a service. It's not an app, it's a true URL. So it needs some type of security to go and access, because obviously we don't want anybody just jumping in and having access to your database. So usually we say simple enough is a VPN, but just know that's Zeta to Go is a service that runs inside the Zeta environment. So from there, we also have some other aspects. And again, I can elaborate if you want me to. We have a lot of options in regards to how we connect markets, how we connect databases. The two big ones we have for us are site replication and Zcast. For those who are familiar with next gen, Zcast is the evolution of WAN casting, and essentially the site replication is new. That is a we activity. The way I describe it is that Zcast is market A says that you need this audio, so we send it over to market B, right? And that can also be request, send, or receive, but essentially someone dictates, I need this, and so we hand it off. Whereas site replication is a we activity. Those are two facilities, two markets that are in sync. We share all metadata, audio, you can do schedules, voice tracks, and so much more. And that keeps two sites in sync, if you will. There's other options we have too for programming purposes, which are called Zeta splits. Think of this as, go ahead. James, you need me or no? Oh, there's no. So we have here is we have Zeta splits, where essentially that's an option, having one main source of content splitting away to another source. Think of this as essentially a master feed. And again, we can use certain words like network or primary, secondary. But the idea here is we have one main source. We break away for either imaging, liners, music, or commercial stop sets. The easiest example for this is think of sporting events. If I have a sporting event on my FM, most sports cannot be transmitted over the internet on your internet stream. So we have to break away. We want some type of alternate programming to play on the stream. That is kind of the most typical example of Zeta splits. Over in Europe, though, what we do is we have more of a mentality with one main station with all the music content, and we split away for local imaging and local spot blocks. And that's more of a kind of a geography split, if you will. From there, we have, of course, I said earlier, Zeta to Go. Again, this HTML5 browser-based. You do need some type of VPN security connection. You're also going to have the same respect in regards to user rights and restrictions. So very simply put, I'm going to pick on Fred because he's just the top right little cell here. If Fred goes and he has access to Zeta to Go, Fred will use his Zeta credentials to log in to Zeta to Go. Note that is different than Zeta Cloud, which you're about to see. Zeta Cloud, treat that its own market, its own entity, different from that of the Zeta environment. But again, Zeta to Go is still tied to your local Zeta system. So there are ways that we can get creative here in regards to the Zeta cluster network. And again, I can elaborate on this or keep it very simple. I'm doing an aerial approach for right now. So the idea is that we have certain tools in our repertoire to make things more of a centralized content. One of the big things I've been talking about, especially after COVID in 2021, you hear me say this, is compounded remote hybrid workflows. It sounds all complex, but the idea is that you start with a more traditional approach, you expand on it, then you apply the hybrid aspect or the remote aspect, and you go from there. So one of the things we do have in our system is we call this G-Selector S3. On the programming side, that stands for Schedule Subscription Service. And the idea is that we have one music log that gets sent out to an X number of affiliates who can maintain local clock structure, right? So the local clocks are unique to the user or to the site, but we're still getting all the music sent from wherever that master log may be. So we have a lot of users that are interpreting this and really applying it to format specific content, right? So the idea is that unfortunately, just the nature of the beast right now, you want to have your champion programmer curating logs, designing those logs so that at the lower market, you don't need somebody to spend the time to schedule the same, Lady Gaga, Selena Gomez, Ariana Grande songs in a row. Whereas if you go with a master format, master log, you're now opening up your staff to do something more live and local or local centric, right? Those blog posts, web page stuff, live remotes when they were still a thing back in the day, and all of that. So the idea is that you're kind of repositioning, your staff's time. And again, the beauty about with the S3 is that I can maintain local clock structure. There is still an aspect of me as an entity at a smaller site. From there, we have some users who are also trying to expand on some national servers, if you will. So the idea there is we have one centralized server. Think of it as almost format, centers, if you will. And you have a format center that has format logs in it, and it goes on, spreads, so on and so forth. Just know that this thing is very customizable at which way you are in that process. You can elaborate on it or keep it very simple if you wanted to. And the same thing applies too with local spots, promos, IDs. And then, of course, you have the hybrid operation, right? Who's to say you can't have a format center Zeta on a VM? So what you do is you have your format captains would go into the VM. They would upload the audio, defining the marks, all the metadata it needs, and then would utilize, we talked about beforehand, that site replication or the Zcast, right? You can have certain sites be in sync with it. Again, the we activity is site replication. The you need this is going to be Zcast. So depending on where you are. So a lot of users will have some type of, again, to give you a rough idea, we'll say there's a national format center where all of the audio gets ingested. That then gets Zcasted to all of the markets. And then you have one market that is very similar to, let's say, a next market. Driving wise, it could be maybe 2 hours. So if you're in the center, you're an hour from both stations, right? So in that example, what you might want to do is have a site rep at the local level. So both sites are in sync. And that way you can utilize your staff. And with Zeta to Go, if I'm in market A, I can open up in Zeta to Go market B. I can voice track, and then I'm good to go. Everything's in there, everything's saved, and we have, of course, spots and audio, Zcast or site repped over. Again, a we activity with site replication. So hopefully you can start to see these compounded remote hybrid workflows, taking a piece of this and applying it to the next step, wherever fits your cluster. Then we're talking about the future of what we're doing here, which is Zeta Cloud. We are right now, I always kind of joked and said that phase 1 is Zeta Cloud-based disaster recovery. Phase 2 is Zeta Cloud automation. We're just not there at phase 2. Obviously, as you know, when you have a product like this, you want to make sure you encompass many different workflows, many different formats. And so what we're trying to do really is get a nice basis of everyday workflows for if you're a news talk, if you're a top 40, or you're some type of in-between. So we're designing that right now. But we do have Zeta Cloud-based disaster recovery. That is out right now. And yes, they're kind of labeled the same. It's more of just semantics at this point. So the way that this works, we have Zeta Cloud, again, HTML5 based. It's a URL. That, of course, has an encoder built into it as well. That's the key output for Zeta Cloud, is that we have an encoder built in. So if you have some type of voice tracker that has, any kind of third-party device or applications, or even just using your phone if you wanted to, again, by being Chrome, Firefox, Edge, Safari, it's going to use your default audio device. You can then record directly into it via the cloud. We have, of course, any codecs in there or the encoder. Everything goes out of that program audio, and there you go. For disaster recovery purposes, we get a lot of questions from people saying, well, I have this URL. That's my encoder. Where should I put it? Right? And the real answer is wherever you want to put it. That's the idea. We have many users. We've heard that, new transmitters these days have the built-in URL function. So they just send it right to the transmitter and call it a day. We have others who have some type of, server or next level redundancy at the server site where they just use that machine. We had one user, which was crazy. I don't see this very often. They have a partnership with their competitors so that they each have a small one-person studio in each other's location, so that if there ever is a disaster, they can go to the competitor's studio and continue to operate as is. So in that scenario, he was picking my brain, and I was saying, okay, well, working through this, you could take your Zeta Cloud, put it towards an encoder, or so the encoder, put that towards a barracks box in that studio, have that barracks box rigged to a board, and you kind of have a makeshift studio. Again, we're talking about disaster purposes here. So we're not looking for, not necessarily, 24/7, 365 broadcast. We're looking to bridge that gap essentially for disaster recovery. So that's overall Zeta Cloud. And then, of course, we encompass the Zeta Cloud hybrid network, right? So maybe we have something where you have, I kind of said this similar beforehand, that main cluster facility. Again, you can keep this as simple. We have users that have one machine is the file server on air machine. That's it. They're live. It's all golden. We have users with analog and digital redundancies in their system running side by side. I always get those questions a lot. And for me personally, it's always about, what are you looking to achieve? Because if you tell me what you're looking to achieve, I can point you in the right direction, at least tell you what's worked or not worked for some of our clients. So you can see here, we have roughly that main cluster facility that has, of course, all your stations built in. That might go to a regional facility. Again, something like site replication, the we activity, or this could just be Zeta, Zcasting. You're getting the audio, and we still have Zeta to go in the cloud that's functioning. But again, when we say cloud, we're not referring to the Zeta Cloud, which is truly written on and for Amazon Web Services. And I'll get to that in just a second. But you can see here, we have this hybrid network where we utilize the main cluster facility. We site rep, just like you would down here, to the regional cluster facility to Zeta Cloud. That treats it as its own market, its own entity. When you look at certain things in Zeta, we have what we call content stores. They're just merely locations of where we're saving the audio and where we're saving the SQL backups. If you want redundancy, we can have multiple audio stores. That's totally fine. Nothing wrong with that. You have UNC paths as well. So you can have either on-site or off-site Zeta audio stores. But with Zeta Cloud, we will incorporate that audio store as part of the site rep. So very simply put, if you have a user that goes rogue at, let's say, the regional cluster facility or the main cluster facility, and they go through Windows, right? They go through Windows and they delete the audio. But if that audio is queued up, scheduled to play, then Zeta knows to go through its order and say, I am the primary audio content store. I'm missing this element that is queued up into my sequencer. Okay, well, I'm going to go and look at the next audio store and recover that. In which case here, if you only have two, the second one could be a Zeta Cloud audio store. So we do have some instances where you could go and say, I'm missing audio from the primary. I'm going to pull it in from the secondary, the Zeta Cloud, and of course, we'll restore all of our aspects. Just know for disaster recovery purposes, that's also how it works. So essentially what we do is let's say you reboot the computer back up, it's back online, and I'm going to review this a little bit, but it goes back online. What Zeta sees, it goes by the log. So if I'm very simply put, if it's 5:45 and I have, a log queued up missing audio, I'm gonna look at that 5:45, queue up that spot and bring it in. I'm then gonna go to 6 o'clock, then 7 o'clock, then 8 o'clock, then 9 o'clock until all my audio is restored. So again, we do go by the log module for in which order do we prioritize the audio to return, right? So that's just the overview. If you have questions, let me know. That's just kind of, again, the generic overview there. I just want to show you some outlines, some servers, and all that good stuff. But this right here, this is I'm just going to open up one last document here. I forgot to queue up here. I'll put this on my side here. So you can see here, this is the actual Zeta Cloud. And what you'll see is that we have, I'm doing two things at once here. We have a URL, us.zetacloud.com. So right now, the way that we configured Zeta Cloud is that this is written for and on Amazon Web Services following best practices and securities. One of the things that really sets us apart from other competitors is that we don't have just a VM in some machine, some data center that you're accessing, right? This is truly written on AWS containers. What we do is everybody has their own allotment of containers, and then we essentially we create your portal, we give you username and password to sign in. So I have my username and password here.
This is where we all politely look the other way, right?
Yeah, right. We do have two-factor authentication as well. I'm a little different because RCS is owned by iHeart, so we have kind of some parent domain things that goes on. So in this structure, we do have some iHeart little tweaking. It will be a little bit different if you're signing on outside of iHeart. That's where the Okta comes into play. And again, what I want to show you here is what this workflow does on a normal 9 to 5 basis. So we had this little graphic we created here, kind of talk about how disaster recovery works. So you have your normal workday. We're at 1. Remember, we talked earlier about site replication. So that's how it gets up to Zeta Cloud. Everything is site repped. Everything as small as a chain type change. So if you just go and change something from a segue to a stop chain, Zeta knows that as that's a change to the environment. Also remember, in Zeta, we utilize GUIDs, global unique identifiers. So it's that 25 alphanumeric character, so nothing gets duplicated. Every asset, every voice track, and specifically every log transition has a log event GUID associated with it. So you can see that if I do a voice track, it's how you don't get those rogue Christmas voice tracks in, because when I voice track something, we're identifying that as this is the heads, this is the voice track, this is the tails, here's the GUID ID. If I go in, let's say, into Zeta's single track editor, and I edit that voice track in the center, let's say I hesitated and I removed it after the fact. Well, I have changed that transition. So that has a new GUID, new identifier, and of course, I have to go back and fix my heads and tails in that circumstance. But because you have that, any log event change is considered part of change in the environment, gets sent up to Zeta Cloud. At that point in time, we're at number 3, disaster strikes, right? Now, this could be a couple different things. When we first started doing Zeta Cloud DR, it really started with fire, floods, or any type of physical issue like earthquakes and stuff like that. Unfortunately, it's really kind of pivoted to cryptoware. That's unfortunately the reality of it. A lot of times users ask us, what makes your elements secure in the Amazon environment? Well, we do have, first off, Amazon is Linux. So it's Linux versus Windows based. We have all the files there that don't have the EXEs in them. And then there's some other, of course, Amazon factors as hand too, just so you know as well. So at that point in time, what I always say is, especially with cryptoware, we wanted to give the engineers a chance to take a breath and assess the situation without losing any type of on-air content, especially on-air commercial traffic. So the idea is, if you get a cryptoware attack, you can unplug those machines, you can go to your phone, you can enable Zeta Cloud. Remember, it's just a URL. You can log in your credentials. And I'll show you here in a second how to enable the cloud for playout. Now, of course, we have everything pre-configured with the Zeta encoder. So that's at wherever you want that broadcast to be. Boom, we're good to go. Zeta also has the SQL backups. So the idea is you do want to maintain your naming infrastructure, right? So if I have essentially a machine that is, Ed Mumford, or we'll say Prod 1 or whatever it may be. Usually for us, we usually say FS1. So we'll just say FS1. That goes off the air, whatever it may be. When I restore the backups, when I build that machine again, I'm going to call that machine FS1. So we have the same naming structure. And at that point in time, we can then restore the database back at number 5. We turn off Zeta Cloud. We just turn off the on-air sequencer, and boom, we're back up and running. Any questions on this before I just close this little picture down? Any questions at all? Cool, great. So this is my Zeta Cloud itself. Again, Zeta Cloud-based disaster recovery, Zeta DR. You'll hear me say that a couple different ways over there. Again, it should look very, very similar to that of Zeta to Go. And that's because we want to start bridging the gap between the two. You'll see a lot more enhancements in Zeta 5.20.1 that's coming down the pipeline, I think, in about a week and a half or so. I'll be working on that build for a while now. And so you'll see some similarities between Zeta Cloud and Zeta to Go. We kind of utilize some of our code for Zeta Cloud for Zeta to Go and vice versa. So Everything in Zeta Cloud respects the same environment of Zeta and Zeta to go. So the naming structure is the same. We utilize modules. We have layouts. You can organize those layouts. You can expand on them as well too with Zeta Cloud. So we can move things up, down, left, right. So you can see if I want to see less of something, I can see left of something. If I want to see more, I can drag out and bring more. So a lot of flexibility there in regards to layout. In fact, you'll probably see more customization in Zeta Cloud than Zeta to go, which is coming down the pipeline. So I have 3 modules open right here. I have my on-air sequencer on the very top. I have my log module in the bottom left. I have my library here in the bottom right. Again, all of this is populated automatically from your local Zeta environment. So that's all here, all securely safe, and all of that good stuff. So if I want to change a module, I can always go here. And for example, I have the playlist, that's the log. Library I have already. There's the voice tracker. There's also a system monitor to show you exactly what your database is looking like, making sure things are all good to go so you can see what players you have, the sequencer health, any type of version you're on or any kind of actions. This is important here because this is going to be at the start where you're going to deploy your on-air sequencer. What we want to do is have your Zeta Cloud disaster recovery always in sync. It's going to be running in tandem with your local environment. The only difference is that when you need to go live, that's when you grab your phone and you will deploy the on-air sequencer. For me, for demo purposes, I, of course, just have it open, but you would have to go in here and deploy the stream. I can tell you it's relatively instant, maybe takes 30 seconds, something like that, not even. And you can see there's also a take offline. This is just so, again, so you're not using the bandwidth purposes. Could you have Zeta Cloud disaster recovery running in tandem 24/7 with your current analog or digital environment? Absolutely, you can. The only difference there is you're paying for it, right? That's the biggest thing because we're talking about bandwidth purpose here, right? So we do include some disaster recovery as part of your monthly package with Zeta Cloud DR. That's built in. We kind of say it's good for one emergency session or one troubleshooting session. That's in there just so you know. But again, it's very cost effective for the most part because you're giving yourself a next level, different site, third party redundancy for a pretty low price as well. So again, you can also your storage here. Just want to show you here. This is where essentially I look at all my stations. And again, just like normal Zeta, this is an enterprise piece of software. So we have one Zeta Cloud environment that has all of your stations inside of it. Just know if you have traditional Zeta, we respect the traditional Zeta approach. So if you have Zeta with one database with 5 stations and maybe another market with one Zeta database and let's say 2 stations, they would be 2 separate Zeta Cloud entities. You can still use SiteRep to make sure the audio is shared across both, but on our purposes, it's a different environment. So we're going to back it up and treat it like a different environment as well. So any questions so far on the system monitor at all? And there's also too, just so you know, there's also hotkeys as well in Zeta Cloud. Again, we're expanding on this pretty greatly over the next couple months or so. So you can see there's some hotkeys. If you want to drag something over, just again, click and drag, boom, there's the hotkey, it's saved. We've got some options. If you want to right click on it to set colors and audition the audio, that's there as well if you want to do that. And any bank, I already created this one, but of course you can create new banks as with the add option here. We go by the simple row and column option for those hotkeys.
Nate, I wanted to go back to something that you talked about probably 15 minutes ago that has been kind of percolating in the back of my mind. You mentioned that a lot of this platform is designed to work on the Amazon cloud in a Linux environment, but yet much of it is deployed on Windows infrastructure at the station level. So is there a parallel development of 2 different products or?
Yeah. The one thing you missed there, there's 2 different products. Treat Zeta Cloud DR as a completely separate product.
Okay, understood. So is the future of some of the RCS platform heading more in a Linux direction than a Windows direction, or no?
I wouldn't say it's going in a Linux direction. We get that question a lot, and we're probably going to be, we're SQL based, so it's going to be a really, really tough sell to move that away from SQL. Everything's written on and for Windows and SQL. I think what you're going to see is you're going to see 15 years of development in Zeta, in the Zeta client, the Windows Zeta. I don't want to call it Windows Zeta. I don't like doing that, but the traditional Zeta approach. And what you're going to see is that the Zeta Cloud automation, right? Because right now we're at Zeta Cloud disaster recovery. The automation is going to start embracing some of those changes. So you might have certain formats fit very well off the bat on Zeta Cloud, whereas maybe news talks with satellite infrastructure may need to have local Zeta because they need that UDP, TCP, serial, GPIOs, all of that stuff. They're going to need that on traditional Zeta approach.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. I can tell you, we do have both U.S. and international users who are utilizing. Again, I kind of mentioned the European model a little bit earlier. For them, there are a lot of very, music-centric stations. And so we have those right now, and that is definitely being implemented in the field. So we definitely have, I don't know the European numbers off to my head, but there is definitely a couple clients with a couple, I want to say there's one in France, like 60 radio stations, I want to say it's one Zeta cloud with about 60 elements inside of it. And I do know there's some conversations in regards to splits is one of the first things we're looking to implement into Zeta cloud-based disaster recovery. So Dan, just to answer your question here, traditional Zeta approach, the Zeta file server with SQL, that's going to be running Windows, traditional approach. And then we had kind of here this, this hybrid model. And the key thing you're missing here is the Zeta cloud site replication. That's the tool here that we have that connects this traditional main cluster facility with that Zeta cloud, the Linux, the Amazon Web Services.
Got it. Thank you.
Cool. Anything I need me to clarify in that?
I'm good.
Cool. Okay. So one of the things I like to show when I talk about Zeta Cloud is I feel like, especially for engineers, I like showing you the configuration of the station. I just feel it looks like, okay, that's what Nate is talking about. So just, here we have RCS hot AC. We have certain things like station ID, again, that lengthy GUID again. Call letters, the time zone that are here. Of course, time zone is important because if you have one centralized entity and you're going to broadcasting at a different time, we want to know that. So that's also important on here. We do have other options in regards to splits. Some, of course, the now playing metadata RDS is built into here as well. And this is constantly evolving. I'm going to tell you too, this is a new Nielsen watermarking settings is brand new to me. So that's interesting too. That's great. We have the player itself. So we have essentially a primary and any redundancy players you want. Zeta Cloud is built in with its own encoder. If you have a non-encoder or a non-Zeta encoder you want to incorporate, we can definitely do that and show you the primary and secondary encoders that are here. There was a talk at one point in time to utilize something like Sound 4 devices, one of our partners, about 2 years ago. So you might have heard that. Sound 4, Omnia, essentially we had some Sound 4 box that was a way to get a playlist. So via the internet, you would send your playlist from Zeta Cloud DR, put it on the Sound 4 box. That Sound 4 box then has, of course, the EQ associated with it, as well as the option to play everything in order as is, even if it's unplugged from the internet. So we had one client that wanted to go and have redundancy purpose. So if everything went silent, they had this one box. That box is at a transmitter site, boom, they're back on the air as well. So just so you know, there's some options there. We even have Sound 4 and Omnia. Looks like Dan's got to run here too. So thank you, Dan. Appreciate it.
Adios.
And so anybody have last minute things for Dan before he jumps off? Cool.
See ya.
See you later, Dan. Have a great one. Thank you. And so we have here, essentially, this is my primary player. We do have options for some processing here. So if you want a Sound 4 or an Omnia processing, we can do that here at this level. So it would be the play out with the sound processing with your encoder going out to your transmitter site. That's an optional thing if you want it. And what we have here essentially is what's going on. This is the primary player. It's a cloud development. Now, what I did is I actually reversed my IceCast. So we have client and servers. If it's a server, obviously, that's the primary point. We would have a URL. Boom, that's what we use as the mounting point for their transmitter site. What I did is I took this utilizing our sister product, Revma, and I took Revma, which is a great content delivery network, and I tied this into my Revma side of things. So what I have here is this is acting more of a client. I have the mounting point built in. There's, of course, my bit rate over here on the right-hand side. Very important, as we all know. I have the AAC. There's all the options for audio you can do. So AAC, MP3, FLAC, all that good stuff is in there. And of course, the bit rate here on the right-hand side. And we go up to 320, just so you know, and as low as 32. Those are all based on just encoder settings. And so what I did is I took this mounting point, put it into my Revma, and then I, of course, have Revma duplicating all of the streams, all of that stuff. So if you have any questions on that, let me know. But that's what I have over there. But again, traditionally, you would have this to be a 1-to-1 ratio. It would be an IceCast server, goes to a URL. That URL, again, pre-configured on some type of barracks box, Sound 4 device, or at the transmitter site on the machine, all of that good stuff. Live metadata, this is where you use your metadata and all of that. Some audio settings, just kind of show you here. We do have, for example, normalization, fade out duration. We do have stretch and squeeze enabled right now. We have a really cool function called an emergency playlist. Now, remember, for disaster recovery purposes, we are talking about where does the content source come from. I'm going to keep this traditional for just me and talk about music-focused stations. Because you can see, as I said earlier, those GPIOs, those triggers, we need to kind of continue to develop those as we're going. So starting with music-focused stations first, let's just say something really bad happens and you have no music log tomorrow. For whatever reason, you didn't do a music log, you went off the air, you have no music for tomorrow. We can always copy a playlist from our logs module, but of course, you have to go there and grab that playlist. Versus we also have the option of doing an emergency playlist here. And this emergency playlist acts as kind of just that, where we do a tag where we pretty much say, hey, you're on emergency playlist, Nate, right? And then once you have that tag emergency playlist, then you can go and say, all right, if I have no music log, play the emergency playlist as defined by the songs available inside of it. Same thing applies for ETM tags. That's in there as well. So, for example, if you're running a little bit early or late, whatever, late, we'll just drop the song. But if running early, we have the same ETM fill and block fill as we do in Zeta. The only difference there is these are tags versus essentially categories in Zeta. Traditional Zeta, we have categories. In Zeta Cloud-based disaster recovery, we have tags. And the reason for that is because, of course, you can have an element in multiple categories, or let me rephrase that. You want to call for elements in different categories. So now you can say, instead of calling for category fill, you're calling for give me powers, sub-powers, recurrence, golds, so on and so forth. That's in there too. And there's some also options for live stream URL, different from Zeta to Go. We can hear the audio from Zeta Cloud as well. And there is, just so we know, there is some integration with G-Selector right now. So this is more of the Zeta Cloud versus Zeta Cloud-based disaster recovery. So I'm not going to talk or comment too much on it, but just I want to tell you the way it works is we have essentially the G-Selector publisher service that runs in Windows. That's in part what keeps G-Selector communicating with Zeta. And that, again, for those who don't know, we do have this little startup manager down here. You can see this breakdown of all of the services that we have that are running in the background in Zeta. This is what keeps you on the air. So if I close the Zeta UI, you'll see my Zeta is not open right now, but I am in fact on the air broadcasting live. Just to kind of show you here, it would be I think it's line 3 is playing right now that I can show you. Somebody's playing on there. Oh, you know what? I know exactly. I stopped my sequencer. So it's there. Trust me. So anyway, what you have here is these are all my services that are running, right? So we're still on the air. We're ready to go. Boom. All of that good stuff. So what we do is we tap into that G-Selector publisher service. That's what we use to communicate. We did some G-Selector enhancements. So there is some ways. So if you ever get into a true, honest pickle in regards to disaster recovery, I'm sure we can work with you to get that up and running as well. And again, the future aspect is going to be, I'm going to say in the relatively short long term, is you'll have G Selector on a more traditional VM. So you'll have G Selector in the cloud on a VM, and that again is going to be a more traditional approach. You have an actual VM instance. We install G Selector on that VM, and we connect the two. Whereas again, Zeta Cloud-based disaster recovery is written as a piece of software in a container on AWS. A very important difference to make. Of course, you're going to ask yourself, hey, Nate, why don't we do G Selector Cloud? And well, that is also coming down the pipeline. We are just a little bit ways from that, obviously, in the long term. But yes, that is very much in our sights, in our scopes. That is definitely part of our timeline as well. And as you can see here, enterprise driven, all my stations here are on the left-hand side. I can always add new stations, delete stations from here as well. Any questions in regards to that? I think I'm looking at 7:30 on the dot. I think I did right around 7 o'clock. So I think I'm right where I want to be in that sweet spot. I have, just so you guys know, I have G Selector, I have Zeta, I have the new Zeta, I have even the beta version of Zeta as well. So if you guys have any questions for me, please don't hesitate to ask. If it's a longer question, I have no problems, keeping this conversation going and an email exchange, or have a conversation down the road as well. So any questions for me?
Nathan, I can't remember if we have your contact info up on the website. We probably do, but just in case, if you want to give it, it'll at least get get recorded on the Zoom recording.
There we go. N Mumford at rcsworks.com, my British cousins. So it's just N Mumford as Mumford & Sons at rcsworks with an S.com.
Nathan, I have a question. This is William Harrison.
Hey, Will. Yeah.
How you doing, man?
Yeah, good. I saw you. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So with respect to like queue triggering, etc., with Zeta Cloud, if I'm running on my Zeta Cloud installation, is there a way that I can map contact closures on my console in order to fire events in case, let's say, for instance, my Zeta server was completely down, and I was trying to link my console in my studio to my cloud instance in order to get audio to the transmitter?
Yeah, and I'll be honest, and that is one of those, I can tell you right now, we have a lot of users that are utilizing Zeta Cloud with a kind of a UI, so to speak, a physical device. That is more of the day-to-day Zeta Cloud automation side of things. I can dig a little deeper for you, but I can tell you that the answer to that is we probably can, but it's also, we're trying not to encourage that line of Zeta Cloud disaster recovery versus Zeta Cloud automation. And it's a great question, and it's one that I would love to be like, absolutely, let's do it 24/7. Where my goal here is to show you guys this, and then I know the engineers always run with it, and I'm trying to be like, okay, just take a quick little kind of little pause back just a little bit.
So the answer is not yet.
I will, for you, Will, I will double check and see where our limitations are in regards to that.
No, that's perfectly fine. Just curious.
Yep. Any other questions, anybody else? Cool. Eric, I'm going to throw it back to you.
I guess that means you did everything perfectly.
You say that now, but
yeah, this one of your users in Washington is SiriusXM, so I sit in a lot of calls. We're gradually moving to Zeta 520, and we have, it's taken a long time to get from. Oh shoot, I'm trying to remember the product that we had before Next Gen, but it's still being
Master
used
Control?
in a few places.
We had Master Control, but that's really going way back for us.
No, it'll come to me when I'm not trying to think about it.
Yeah. While you're thinking about it, just so everybody knows, so just I feel like you guys might appreciate some of the builds that are coming down the pipeline. So we've been working extensively on 5.20.1, which has a lot of scalable factors in it. So if you look at the development of Zeta, we had essentially, it's about 13 years, give or take, depending when you did to figure out what its birthday is. But it's around 13-ish years. And what we did is we wanted to design the software for really, you know, those big stations, right? So like, how many stations can I have? How many do you have hardware wise? How many users can I have inside of Zeta? Stuff like that. And of course, that was all designed 15 years ago. So now technology advancements, once again, 5.20.1 is definitely that build that is supposed to propel us for the next decade as well, to do those expanded upgrades in the back end and all of that good stuff. From there, that's 5.20.1. That is should be about 2 weeks or so, I think, as it's released. I think it's the 22nd-ish. And then we have 5.21.1 not far after. I think that hits beta in April. And that version is, of course, the optimization side of the 5.20.1. So one of the things that we did as a company is we try to utilize some WAN functionality, right? That came into play with one of our clients. And what we wanted to do is essentially expand on the performance of Zeta. So we went through each module, through each kind of task, each generic task or button or icon or whatever it does. And we timed it. We looked at what the process was. So for example, like, you know, one of the things we found is, and this is kind of binding 2 or 3 elements, but the gist is there. If you change the chain type in the log module, and you want to see that change reflected in the on-air module, there was a couple of course functions that needed to happen. But what we found was one of the things we were requesting was a table header, so that we can identify, here's the table, here's the info, copy it over, there's the table header, there's the info, copy it over, so on and so forth. But we realized is that's all under the hood. Nobody cares about seeing the headers. We only care for either supporting or debug purposes. So what we did is we disabled check for the headers, right? So now when you look at that same workflow, what was, let's say, 6 steps, you know, receive it, see the header, send it, and then duplicate that process, we're now removing that process. So now we're just saying, okay, here's what I want, send it over, which, as you can tell, on multiple functions is making a difference. So we're pretty excited for the 5.21.1. That's also coming in the pipeline as well. And of course, I think 5.21.2 is that's Q4, but I want to give you guys a heads up on that. Any other questions? Do you remember the automation system, Eric?
I didn't. It was an older RCS product, and it just will not come to me.
It was right? Yeah.
Yeah. Because it was what Sirius started with.
Ooh,
and after the companies merged, we moved our way to Zeta, but it took quite a while.
Yeah. It was big.
Yep. It'll come to me right after we're done here. But in any case, we've been migrating for a long time. Matter of fact, we just I think this week or maybe last week virtualized the database.
Mm-hmm.
And given the number of people that we have that use it every day, every time we touch the thing, everybody gets nervous, and that has gone reasonably painlessly. There's a few things that still need to be smoothed out, but nobody was upset enough to ask us to back it out. So
that's a solid win. We'll take that.
But I guess we thank you. Our April is a little fuzzy right now because it's likely the end of the month will be some sort of joint effort with SEMPTE. Although, given what we talked about right before this meeting, I've reached out to see if we can find somebody who knows a little bit more about the C-band relocations that are going on right now, to see if we can toss together a program that covers that. Now, my presumption is that everybody who's affected by that already knows, and it won't be news to them, because there's not enough time to do much about it. But when we were, somebody mentioned, hey, did we do anything about that? And it's like, well, no, but we don't have anything in the first half of April. So keep an eye on the website. You may find something akin to a pop-up meeting, because April was frequently a month that we would skip because of NAB. And then when we decided to do something, we were going to combine it with SEMTI, and they're at the end of the month. So this may create a earlier, extra bonus gathering. And we want to thank VTS, who are the sponsors of this particular meeting, and Mary, who will be picking up again as the VTS sponsorship falls away in a few months. We got a good, I think 24 people we started with. We still have 18 of them left, so that's also a good sign. And we look forward to seeing everybody next month. Keep an eye on the website for changes. Fred, do you have anything else?
I was going to add too, everybody has my email there. So, and I know William has it too. So if you have any questions, I'm here to help out. So don't hesitate to shoot me an email or whatever. One last thing I forgot to mention too, by the way, Eric, is there is, just so everybody knows, if you're a visual learner, one of the things we did during COVID is I didn't want radio to be the thing that stresses you out during COVID. I guess this Friday will be my 1-year quarantine anniversary. What I started doing was these kind of RCS office hours. We just took a product and kind of broke it down. And then we essentially kind of elaborate on that. And so every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern time, I host what we call RCS Live. It ranges from all of our products. We usually kind of rotate between G Selector and Zeta, because those are the biggest products we have. But if you look over here, I just want to show you, there's a website here called rcsworks.com/RCS-live. And I'll put that here in the chat too, so everybody has it. But this is kind of an archive of all of our videos that we've done. And you can see there's a wide range of topics. So talking about difference between site replication and Zcast. Why would you implement and use your examples of Zeta splits? Building G Selector clocks, that's in here. Building better rotations with priority lists, that's in here as well. And what you can do is if you go to the blog section on the top right of rcsworks.com, I actually take the time to break down, because these videos can be long. There's a couple hour-long videos in here of me just rambling and answering user questions. And I don't want to have you sit through that if that's something that doesn't pertain to your situation. So what I did is I actually broke down the video in a paragraph form in a write-up. And then what I did is I talked about, for example, you can see here, I was talking about how to create a macro so that you can automatically define a split route change in your clock structure, or a hotkey so that you can go on the fly, add a hotkey that says change the route in Zeta to go. I can be at home remotely, fire that hotkey, and boom, we're good to go. So you can see this breaks down every one of the videos that I have here too. If you have a question of a certain topic that you either want to get covered, obviously this is over a year of archive footage. So poke me, let me know. I'll be more than happy to point you in the right direction of a video that's going to pertain to your topic. Or if there's one that I missed, let me know. That's there too. But again, it's a great resource for users. I personally come from the programming background, so I like to take G Selector in kind of a music philosophy standpoint. So if you do have any friends or coworkers, whomever, who have a lot of issues, because there really is no farm system in programming anymore, definitely check out some of these videos. Again, you can email me with any questions. I'll point you right direction, or any of that good stuff. That's here too.
All right. Well, not quite 8 o'clock, but I want to give everybody a thank you. And once again, keep an eye on the website for any changes to April. We're pretty much locked in May, but April's a little fuzzy. There could be 2 meetings. There could be 1 meeting at the end of the month. If that is all we have, it'll be us and SEMTI. So thanks one and all. I always don't know how to remember to end these things, but I will let you guys get back to your evenings.
All right, thanks, Eric.
Nice, everybody.
Appreciate it,
Guys.
See you, everybody. Thanks so much.
Seeing everyone.
Be safe, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nathan. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
See
Bye.
ya.
Bye, one and all.
Thanks, everybody.